Hi friends, and welcome to Our Weekly Craft, a source for ideas, inspiration, and fun for crafters. I'm Sarah White, Chief Maker at OurDailyCraft.com, and this week I want to talk about mindful crafting versus stress crafting because I feel like I'm doing both of those, or I'm trying to do both of those right now. Like, I'm using my crafting as stress relief because of everything in the world right now. But at the same time, while I'm doing that, I'm not necessarily like being really mindful about how I'm crafting or the energy that I'm putting into the stuff that I'm making. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about the differences and how those things can come together to make our creative experience better. So to get things started, you'll see first that I'm in the opposite end of my craft room today. I'm sort of experimenting as this goes on with where the right place to do these videos is, other than the bland door in the background there. This is my collection of craft books, which I thought was kind of fun, and this little button thing that I made. It's kind of fun to see a different perspective, and I'll probably move around a little bit until I find the right space. Secondly, what I'm wearing, I wanted to share with you this sweater that I made. I designed this one myself, if you can call it that. It is the basic top-down raglan recipe instructions from Knitting from the Top by Barbara Walker. So I never wrote out the pattern because I didn't feel like grading it or anything, and I didn't really design it because I just followed her instructions. But it is cool because it has 2 strands of yarn held together. Let me come a little closer so you can see. That I used, all of my red, orange, yellow scraps, basically. And it's 2 different colors held together throughout. But then when you change one color and keep the old of the other color for a little while, so that it makes this sort of faded effect, which I like. And I feel like my way of complimenting pretty much anything that I've knit that's a sweater is that it feels like a sweatshirt. A few years ago when I went through my KonMari phase, I got rid of all my sweatshirts because they don't spark joy, because they made me feel kind of schlubby and not put together and like I didn't care how I looked, which is true. But since that time, I feel like I'm knitting all these sweaters that are really comfortable and a little roomy, like a sweatshirt might be, but look nicer than a sweatshirt. So I guess it's good that I KonMari'd all my sweatshirts and made something better for myself. So anyway, what I've been working on this week, as I've mentioned, I've been kind of stress crafting because of the world around us. I have a kid in school. So far we've managed to stay well, all of us, this whole 2 years, and it feels sort of more inevitable than it ever has that that's not going to be the case in the future. And it's just hard, and I think everybody is feeling that right now. That, there's some feeling of like, I want to hide my little hole, and there's some people who are like, no, we just need to go back to normal, or whatever that is. And it's hard to navigate all of that, which you don't need me to tell you. But so I've been knitting and crocheting and whatever a lot. So this is the progress that I've made on my Achu. I think that I'm getting pretty close. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, this sweater is about the length that I would like it to be, but it's supposed to have 2 inches of ribbing at the bottom. So I am getting pretty close on that, which is nice. I need to try it on again because I haven't in a while. One thing I didn't show you, my stitches are falling off. Hold on one second and then I'll show you. One thing that's cool about this that I don't think I showed you the last time is that it has these fake seams. See how there's like a little bit of, it's just, you purl those stitches every other round when you come to them, and it makes like a seam on the side, which I thought was kind of cool. It's different. So I've been working on this a lot, and I told you about the crochet poncho that I wanted to make from the new crochet last week. So I have this piece that I've done. I just pulled out a stitch, but so it's 3 different yarns. It's kind of hard to tell. These 2 look really similar, but there's 4 rows of each color in this so far. So this one I think is a Lion brand, Woolly's Thick and Quick, that I've had for ages. The middle one is Hue and Me, and then the top is 2 strands of what's this called? Brown Sheep. I can't think what the name of it is. I'll put it in the description, but it's a Brown Sheep yarn that I've had forever. I used it in one of my books for a sweater and had some leftovers, and it just happened that I had a bunch of similar kind of grassy greens, so I've put those together. I started another piece of this that is not as far along, but maybe half this size, because even though the sides of the poncho are different lengths, I kind of thought it would be nice to have at least the ends be the same stripe pattern. Because I'm using stash, I'm pretty sure I'm going to run out before I run out of poncho to crochet. So I'm planning ahead and working on both pieces at once. And then if the back is completely different, I don't really care. The third thing I've been working on lately is hearts, because it is almost Valentine's Day and I'm a crafter, and so I have to throw a little bit of love to the upcoming holiday. And this is sort of an illustration of the mindful, mindless divide too. Because I've been using my knitting for stress relief, I try to keep a project at my desk. So I've been working on these hearts. So if I'm feeling stressed or bored or whatever, instead of like doom scrolling and, you know, being on Instagram for hours at a time, I'll be like, okay, well, I should just knit a couple rows of whatever I'm working on instead. Which is great, except that I feel like I have no attention span even for the knitting right now, and that I really need to be more mindful even in knowing that I'm using it as a coping mechanism for my stress. And so with these hearts, I did this first one sitting at my desk entirely, and I kind of rushed through it, and I had this vision for, I mean, you know what a heart looks like, right? And I was like, oh, I want it to be about yay wide, and I knit it all in one piece. So it has, you work up the sides and then you divide and do this part and then this part, and you Kitchener stitch at the top. And it's fine, but it's not, it's kind of fat and weird, and I didn't love it, and I gave it to the cats to play with already, and it's a little sad looking already. But so the next day I was like, okay, I'm going to really like pay attention to what I'm doing on this one, and I'm going to think it through. I'm not just going to design it on the needles. I'm going to actually like have a plan and focus on it while I'm working on it, and try not to do anything else while I'm working on it. And so this is the second one, which I made yesterday, and it's really close to what I wanted the first time. So I spread out the increases across the bottom. I spread out the decreases on the top a little bit too. It's just smaller. It's just a nicer shape to me. And, you know, I learned while I was knitting this that it is really hard right now for me to monotask. Even with something that I enjoy like knitting, which I do enjoy and do all the time. And again, it's my stress relief right now. But even while I was sitting while my daughter was in the shower and I was knitting this, and I was like, oh, I just want to pick up my phone and do something else and think about something else. And I don't know why. I mean, there's no reason in that moment that I was like, I need to do something else right now. But I feel like just the everything of right this moment, that I feel like I'm being pulled in different ways, and I just want escape, and like one escape is not enough at one time. Like I usually am knitting and reading, or knitting and watching TV, and just knitting was really weird. And so that's where I am right now, is that I'm trying to get that balance between like stress knitting that also feels kind of stressful and is just like I'm pumping out all this stockinette stitch on this sweater and I'm not really paying attention and I'm not really into it. I'm just doing it, and then I'm like, oh, you know, my hands hurt because I've been like tight and not paying attention to my body and not paying attention to what I'm doing, instead of just like, I'm gonna sit in this chair or in bed or whatever, and I'm just gonna knit, and I'm not gonna read, and I'm not going to scroll Instagram, and I'm not gonna talk to anyone, you know, if I can avoid it. I'm just gonna sit and knit. And that's really hard, but I think that it's really important for me, and maybe for you too, to like consciously, mindfully create right now. And that it's not about speed, it's not about even what you're making, but like getting in the flow of stitch by stitch by stitch, I'm making this thing, and stitch by stitch by stitch, it's calming me down. I'm focusing on this thing and just this thing, stitch by stitch by stitch. And it feels kind of revolutionary to be like, this is just the thing. I'm just doing this and not this and 100 other things at the same time. So I don't know how well that's gonna work. And obviously I'm still knitting in front of the TV, and I'm still knitting when my daughter's playing video games, and I'm still, you know, crocheting in between work activities and all of that. But I'm going to really try this week, and I hope that you'll try it too if you're feeling that stress of everything like I am, to just sometimes, once or twice a day, even 5 or 10 minutes at a time, just sit and do whatever your creative thing is. You know, maybe you're sew at a sewing machine or something, and so maybe you already are doing it and that's the thing you're doing. But I know a lot of people listen to music, or they watch TV even while they're sewing or whatever, or painting, or whatever your craft is. Just try it this week a couple times and see how that feels. I'd be interested to know if it's kind of weird for you, or if you're old hat at just sitting and doing the one thing without any distractions. Because I think that I don't know, I hadn't noticed that, because I was making so much, but that I'm always doing it with something else, and I'm not ever like really focused and paying attention to what's happening on my needles or on my hook or with my machine or whatever. So that's my challenge for myself for this week, and I hope that you will try it too. And I would love to hear how that works out for you if you do try it, or if you're already a pro at monotasking. I would love to hear your tips, because I apparently stink at it. I know that I sometimes talk about what I'm reading and what I'm watching in this video too, but I don't really have anything to add this week. I'm reading Les Miserables, and it's a slog, y'all. I've read about 500 pages, and I had to give myself a break because that's only a third of the book, and it's a lot, man. So on my list of books I've always wanted to read, and so I'm doing it. I like to sometimes give myself a hard book at the beginning of the year so that I feel this sense of accomplishment. That's hard. It's really hard. I mean, there are good parts, and then there's 75 pages about the Battle of Waterloo, and I want to chuck it across the room. So I'm taking a break and reading Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead. I love him. His stuff is so it's good stuff. He's a great writer, and even if the subject matter is not something you'd think you'd be interested in, the way he writes just makes everything good, and so I'm really enjoying that. I haven't read any craft books this week, but still working on that new crochet project from the book I mentioned last week. and I will try to do better in the future for reading. I've been doing yoga with Adrienne's 30 Days of Yoga. And so I haven't been watching a lot of TV because I usually watch TV while I'm working out on my exercise bike. I finished The Chair. I hope that people will watch it if you haven't already. Sandra Oh was just nominated for, I think, a Screen Actors Guild Award for her work in that. And I'm hoping that that will renew interest in the show, and then maybe it'll get a second season, because it was only 6 episodes and it doesn't feel like enough. Even though the story does kind of tie up, I would like to see what happens to those characters next. So if you do watch it, or if you have watched it already, I'd love to hear what you thought about it. And maybe I'll have some more interesting reading and viewing things to share. And I would love your recommendations if there's something that you've liked. I'm not to knit with at this point, I guess, but yeah. So if there's something you're reading or watching that you've enjoyed, I'd love to hear about it. And I really think that's all for this week. I hope that you'll try this mindfulness challenge. It's going to be real interesting. I'm a little nervous about it, but I know that it'll be good for me, that I need to not be doing a million things all the time. So I hope that you guys have a good week, and I will see you here next week. Bye.